Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to the next generation of athletes, parents, and coaches to talk about the impact sports has on our lives. In today's episode, I get to interview my varsity basketball coach from back in the day, Coach Bisio. He is now the head coach at College of the Redwoods men's basketball team. And in our episode today, we talk about the number one way to be a great coach and how to implement that in our daily practice. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Bridging Impact Podcast. Bisio, I'm excited to have you on. For those that are listening, Bisio was my varsity basketball coach when I was a player back in the day. So welcome to the show, Bis.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's dive right in. I'd love for you, because Bridging Impact is all about talking about the impact of sports that have on our individual lives and then giving that back, right? And now you're a coach at CR. But before we talk about your coaching career, I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit about your playing career and just what the game of basketball meant for you growing up.
Yeah, great way to kick it off. Those of us you're a local guy, like what the Adorney Center is in Eureka. It was this like community center gym that was started in like the early '90s. My mom got a job there when she was young, right when it opened. So I just kind of grew up just going to work with her and just basically shooting around for like 8 hours a day in the summertime, and was lucky enough to just meet up with some really, really cool kids and players who ended up having great careers, who were all just kind of attracted to that venue at that time. I grew up here and went to St. Bernard's, a local private school, and had a 3-year varsity career there. My goal was to play Division II basketball. So I went to a college called College of Notre Dame, right out of St. Bernard's, which is no longer even a school anymore. After 1 year there at redshirting, I played at Santa Rosa Junior College for 2 years under the legendary Craig McMillan, who's still there. He's a very famous coach on the West Coast and even beyond. I think a lot of people are familiar with him in California. He played with Steve Kerr on those great Arizona teams. He was the first McDonald's All-American to ever commit to Arizona, which is crazy because they've had probably 50 to 100 since. And he's still doing his thing, man. So I was really lucky to play for him. And then from there, got a scholarship to Cal State Monterey Bay, which, as we've seen, is in Humboldt State's league. We see them a lot. Had a nice little 2-year career there, and was lucky enough to get a contract to play overseas. And even though I didn't play much due to injury, that's kind of what just kept my career going, and eventually spiraled into coaching the game, which is something that obviously you do now as well. And one of the main genesis of being on this podcast today is talking about giving back to the game. And after a long career of playing, that's what I'm trying to do right now in my current role at College of the Redwoods.
Absolutely. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about kind of the grind. You set out some goals that you wanted to play D2 basketball, and you went to,
Sure.
Notre Dame, you redshirted, you went to play JUCO ball, right? I'm sure there was, a lot of peaks and valleys as a player, just like as there is, a coach or whichever job that people are doing. I'm curious, how you, as a point guard really, wanted to work on your craft and continue to get better every single day, and how that has helped you now as a coach.
Great question. Yeah, I mean, the game has changed quite a bit in the last 20 years. Back when I'm like 5'10", so even back then I was considered a little guard. Um, in those days, like it wasn't as much pick and roll, there wasn't as much 3-point shooting. So when teams would see a little dude on the court, like they would just try to post that guy incessantly. So I think little guards in those days, like there was a certain type of toughness that you had to have, and a certain type of physicality. And I think you could even see that when you look at people's bodies in those days. Like I was super bulked up, to be able to play at that level. Whereas now it's more about speed and kind of getting downhill and it's not as much about trying to grind out tough twos against a little guy. That's just not really in anybody's interest anymore, you know. So I had to really work on my body to stay bulky, kind of in those days, to survive the style of play. As you know, at the point guard, there's a lot of responsibilities you have, man. You got to run the team. You got to make sure you're getting people the ball at the right time. You're doing exactly what the coach is asking you to do. You're an extension of the coach on the floor. I think that's why you see point guards transition into coaching a little bit easier than maybe people in other positions. You know, like if you're a big center or something, you kind of evolve into have a certain type of perspective on the game based on the position that you played. You know, it's like, you know, get the big guy the ball, kind of a thing. Whereas the point guard, there's a buffet of things that you have to consider at all times, which is why it might be an easier transition for people who played that position to get into coaching. Um, you know, sometimes in high school, like you know, when you have some ability, you know, you're kind of looked at more as a scorer, even when you are playing the point guard. And one thing I noticed from going to high school to college is how my role as a scorer had to get shelved like immediately, because everybody on my team was a better scorer now than I was, you know. So that transition, that type of humility, I think was really important to confront right away, and kind of an ego check. Like, it's like, all right, well, you might have been getting 20 a game at St. Bernard's, but now it's like that's not what's going to be going on out here anymore. So how do you continue to make yourself useful and tailor your game to fit into a bigger picture and accommodate players with skill sets that have surpassed you in ways that you even kind of identified with all the way up to that point, right? That takes a certain type of like humility, maturity. It takes a coach who can be really honest with you, which is what Craig McMillan is really known for. It's being, you know, very direct. Another thing about junior college ball at that time was the level was a lot different than it is now. Like when I just walked on to Santa Rosa, I was tepidly recruited, but I was leaving a Division II school kind of with nowhere to go when I left Notre Dame. And when I tried out for Santa Rosa, there was like 65, 70 guys who were trying out for like 15 spots. So it was super competitive. And in those days, there was a lot more Division I players in California junior college. So like University of Oregon, Boise State, University of Idaho, Utah State. I mean, we had like pretty high level Division I players, and that's not something that you see anymore. So making those teams, in my opinion, was a little harder in those days. And I think that transition to making that team was a real valuable one, because I was really on the cut line that whole tryout my freshman year. And I think the reasons that I made the team really didn't have as much to do with like the game of basketball than it had to do with other things like personality traits, you know, being a team player, being a good communicator, being unselfish, being punctual, being on time, being accountable. Somebody that, like, you know, coach knew that he could rely on me to, you know, to push our starters every day, because I did not come in, you know, to that program as a starter. But in 2 years, I left as a starter. Um, but, you know, I really had to check my ego at the door to even be able to make that team, which was something that I think was really valuable to learn, like as a young person. And now, as I feel like, serves me in the way that I view coaching and view players who maybe might be 10 through 12 in the rotation, and really continue to communicate how important they are to our whole journey, because I identify so much with what they might be going through day in, day out, if you know what I mean.
No, that makes a ton of sense. Because I'm working with a lot of different athletes now too, and having that humility, you know, right when you join a team, right? You know, I'm working with the Frost Shop team, so I have all the eighth graders who were, you know, they were dogs in eighth grade, right? Like that, they were there, you know, and then you come in and you got to, you know, accept your different roles. I see it when I'm helping out on varsity as well, and I'm curious, as I hearing you talk, I feel like a lot of your kind of experience and maybe coaching philosophy, and you can elaborate and expand on it more, comes from that experience from JUCO ball and making that transition from being a 20-point a game guy to probably someone who's setting the table more, facilitating. You're not the number one scorer, and just having that recognition and recognizing, the leadership qualities that a good point guard brings to a team. I would love for you to talk about that transition, from what you learned as a player to now as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The one thing that I think sticks out the most, and especially in that junior college transition we're talking about with Craig McMillan, is, you know, there's a vulnerability in just like giving your full faith to a basketball coach, right? Like there's doubt, there's fear. It's like, does this guy have my best interest in mind? Does this woman have my best interest in mind? Um, like, can I really just trust that this person is telling me the truth? Do I believe in this offense that they're asking me to run? And I think at that time, the only way I was going to be able to survive was if I just completely trusted everything he wanted to do. It's like a leap of faith. It's funny, I was watching Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade last night. And there's that scene at the end of the movie where he just has to take that step out on that ledge without knowing if he's going to die or not, right? I mean, it's a dramatic example, but it's like a figuratively, that's what it looks like. Is I just took a step in good faith and was like, I'm going to trust what this person wants me to do. I'm going to trust that they have my best interest in mind, and I'm going to trust that they're going to develop me in the right way. And I'm so grateful that I allowed myself to be vulnerable like that, because now, in being rewarded for being that vulnerable, it gives you a different perspective when you're asking players now to kind of show that type of vulnerability to you, that you have to protect them. They have to be safe. You have to be a coach of your word. You know what I mean? And I don't think you can become a player to the highest of your ability unless you allow yourself to be that vulnerable. And it has to be a safe space in order for all of the players to allow themselves to be that vulnerable. Maybe it's easier for some than others, but that's the main takeaway. I feel like in that kind of situation where that leap of faith, man, like some players that they might not want to do it, they don't feel comfortable, and then things might not play out for them because you have to have that level of trust with your coach. And I think it really did teach me that. Um, it's not easy, like you're probably seeing it at your level as well, where it's like, players, like, they want to maybe stay in their bubble, stay with what's comfortable, fight the reality of what their coach is asking them to do. But ultimately, when you show your coach that you'll allow yourself to be developed, you're in turn showing the rest of your teammates too, that like, I can show a type of humility here and model the type of humility that if all of us model that, that's the path for us to all become the best players we can be, and allow this coach to, mold us in a way that's going to make us all successful individually and hopefully collectively. You know what I mean? I noticed in your bridging impact, the last thing you had was goal setting, right? Like, in order for any of those goals to come true that you set as a collective, each individual is going to have to allow themselves to be vulnerable somewhere along the way to play into the interests of those goals that you create together.
100%. So as I'm kind of hearing you talk, there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about and I'm curious about. You talked about one, building a safe space. I'm curious what that looks like and what it sounds like and what it feels like for players, and how you intentionally build that, obviously as your experience as a high school coach overseas and now at CR.
Yeah, great question. I think, like, building a safe space, like a safe working environment, that probably looks different to everybody that you talk to. For me, it's a place where you come day in and day out, and you not only do you celebrate the game and you honor the game, but you also honor your fellow teammate and your coaches, by being just really loving and very positive, right? Like, you've been in our working environment, like, there's There's a lot of enthusiasm every day to be together and to play the game. We try not to take for granted how special it is to have the opportunity to get together and even play the game. But my style of building confidence in players comes through really like an over the top approach to positive reinforcement. Like there's not a single thing, even just like a simple made layup in a practice is celebrated and is encouraged. And I think by building people up in those kind of ways, that creates the kind of safe space and trust to where you can then make mistakes and know that it's totally okay, because we're here for bigger reasons. Like we're here to celebrate the game, we're here to love each other. And I believe that's the way to actually get players to play with a type of confidence that is sustainable, a type of confidence that can really improve you at a faster rate. I think it's a type of confidence that only comes when players are truly at peace in their heart, because they know that they're here, they're cared for, and they're allowed to be vulnerable without that type of fear. There's also a type of way to build confidence that comes from like a more fear-based approach. Like that's not natural for me. um like somebody asked me a couple weeks ago, like, what are the 5 key points to becoming a successful coach or whatever. Number one for me is you got to be yourself, dude. You know what I mean? Because if you're trying to be somebody else, like if I'm trying to be Craig McMillan, like nobody's gonna listen to me, man, because players are smart, man. They feel that that's not you, you know like you have to be completely yourself. And even in doing that, there's a type of vulnerability that you're modeling for your players. Like, look, dude, we got to all be ourselves out here, and we all got to be cool with being ourselves if we're going to improve at basketball, if we're going to become closer friends. Like, we all got to just shed it all right now and really be honest with each other and love each other, like in that kind of way. So, I mean, the safe environment, like I start practice with team breathing every day. We start at center court. We hold hands. We tell each other some affirmations. We tell each other the things that we appreciate about each other. We talk about the things that are exciting us that day. And we lock hands and we try to find one collective pulse, you know, as long as it takes. Sometimes you can lock in 15 seconds. Sometimes it takes a minute, whatever. But it's just that visual commitment that we're making to each other, and even a physical manifestation of it, that like we're here to play as one. Everybody is safe here to make mistakes, and ultimately we want to leave this session feeling like we've improved as players, feeling like we've gone one step closer to achieving our goals, and also taken a step further in our personal relationships with each other. That's how, one of the ways that we create a safe working environment. But I think the overarching thing is just like super high energy, just positive. Just every time somebody in the gym does something that you like, just tell them. Just tell them. And if all of your teammates do that too, then it becomes this place where it's like, wow, man, it's exciting to do the right thing because everybody notices it. You know what I mean?
100%. No, 100%. I love that. And I think I probably, our personalities are probably similar in that aspect of like, I'm always trying to be positive, bring the enthusiasm, the championship energy. I'm curious as a young coach, I think sometimes like I know who I am, like I'm confident in who I am and I'm building that. But I think sometimes I'm maybe curious for you as your experience as a young coach, like sometimes I have like almost the imposter syndrome is what I'm doing right. Right. Cause then you have, other players, sometimes at least for younger guys, the frost off, they think some of the things that I do is, for lack of a better term, like corny and cheesy. And it's hard to get them to buy into like, some of the championship and making sure we group and huddle up. So I'm curious, how you navigated that as a young coach, and now you still kind of continue to work with and get guys to continue to buy in, or if it's kind of like a process and takes time.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a process, and it's also just about like refining like whatever your instincts are, right? I had to learn the hard way. My first coaching job was in Europe in FIBA ball, and I was probably, I don't know, probably around your age. I don't know. I was like 24, 25 when I got my first coaching job in Denmark, and I went over there and I was just trying to be Craig McMillan, basically, because he's a Hall of Fame coach. We won all these championships, and I'm just like, I'm gonna do what he did because I know it works and I believe in it. The problem was everybody could feel that that wasn't my true personality. I was being hard on the players. You probably ran a few of these in your time with me, running a deep six, a deep 12. I was doing exactly what he did, where we would walk in the gym, and the first thing we would do is run a deep six. And to me, they were like, "Wait, what? Like we're not even warmed up, dude." And I was like, "Nope, get on the line," because that is the way that I can tell right away whether or not you guys are here serious to be coached today. And if you have that focus, I'll know if you make this deep six time in 32 seconds, and they're just like, "Dude, I don't think that that's really who you are." You know what I mean? And they were right, man. The players are usually right. Like if there's a drill that you really love, but it's just not clicking with the players for some reason, it's usually not because they're wrong. It's because you're just not teaching it well enough, or you're not teaching it in a way that is like in your style enough to where that they can relax and trust that there's a reason we're doing this and it's going to play into some sort of bigger picture, right? Like players are so smart intuitively, they really are right a lot of the time. So if something isn't taking, it's because you have to continue to refine the way that you're teaching it yourself, or it has to come from a place that's even deeper you than the way that you may be presenting it at any given moment. As far as what you're saying about, you kids maybe thinking it's a little corny, or like, I don't know why we're doing this, kind of cheesy. Like, that's another way of proving that they're not yet allowing themselves to be vulnerable enough to let this stuff take hold. There's still some part of their ego that's kind of like pushing back, that's like, wait, I don't know, like, why are we doing this? It's like, no, we need to even peel the onion back further. Like we have to really allow these things to happen. And for young people, that's really, really difficult, and I think it's increasingly difficult as we kind of continue on into the newer generations of players. You know what I mean? Um, I think you're probably in a generation where you probably didn't play for too many like really hard line coaches. My generation like was the last generation of playing for the like kind of the Bobby Knights of the world. So I think we all kind of have our own kind of perspective and experiences, whereas kind of like newer age coaches maybe like yourself who are leading with positivity and trying to take different tactics in terms of team building. I think it just takes a little time for those things to take root. And you know I would just recommend from your perspective to just follow whatever your gut and your heart says to do, and if you feel like you're being yourself in teaching those things, then just double down on being yourself, and then just continue to kind of refine those things based on whatever the players are kind of feeling from them. Like it's kind of a give and take. Like they're not all the way wrong, you're not all the way right. Like it's somewhere there in the middle. You have to find that harmony, or maybe not in the middle, but somewhere in there is the harmony.
Right. It's the art of coaching versus the science of coaching. There's no like, cookie cutter way of like this is how you coach, right? It's kind of
No.
what you probably got that question asked about the 5 steps, and you said, okay, well, number one, you have to do this, and that's just being your authentic. As a coach, you are a leader of young men or young women, or of your team, and so and that leadership style has to be unique and authentic to you. And I think that's something that, I'm still learning, right? As a newer coach, I'm trying to kind of figure that out. And one of the realizations I did have the other day that you're kind of talking about is like, okay, let's just like, let the moment kind of like speak to me instead of like always having to plan and curate in my head. I'm going to say the perfect thing. I'm like, okay, let's just, let's read the room, let's trust our gut, and then let's, have a conversation from there instead of like always trying to, perfect the message.
I think you just said it perfect, man. In fact, I would. Can you say that one more time? You said you have to read the room, go with your gut, like, and then just go from there, like, or whatever you like. That's brilliant, man. That's the artistry in coaching, is being in tune enough and in the moment enough to know when those moments are presenting themselves too, right? Like each season has these really, really important pressure points, and you need to know whether you're going to press on that one or you're going to let that one go. You know what I mean? And just kind of go with whatever the flow is in that moment. That's what coaching is, man. Like harnessing and leveraging moments of discomfort or moments of joy and trying to blast those things into something bigger. I mean, adaptability is one of the most important aspects in being a coach, in my opinion. Flexibility, adaptability, right? We had to show that this last week as a program. At noon on Saturday, we get told that we're playing at Humboldt State at 2 p.m. and we got to get everybody up there. Like that could really throw people for a loop, and really mess with your pregame routine, your circadian rhythms, what time you like to eat, or do you like to visualize yourself performing in the color uniform that you're going to wear in a certain venue, playing as hard as you can, making smart plays, right? All that's like, wait, how do we get a ride over there? Like, we're playing at 2. Wait, I'm hungry. Like, dude, adaptability, right? That's something we talk about almost every day to try to be ahead of the curve when, kind of moments like that happen. But the adaptability of knowing that, like, okay, in this moment right now, the flow feels like it's going this way. I need to steer it this way, or no, I'm gonna ride these guys and I'm gonna trust it and show that I'm with them in this moment, and we're gonna ride all this together, kind of a thing, right? Um, yeah, flow, adaptability, but again, just show your people who you really are. Like, show them your heart completely, and just disarm everybody by being like, okay, like, this guy is making himself like really vulnerable to us. Like, that's going to allow me to kind of just relax and actually listen to what he's saying or she's saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, number one is always modeling the way, right? You can't ask anything of your players if you're not going to do it of yourself, and I think that is a really important point. And I'm curious, you talked about, obviously, showing them what vulnerability looks like and being adaptable and being flexible. I'm curious, as because I'm still a coach at Frostsoft level, so I don't, and I have, another job. I'm building out Bridging Impact, doing the podcast. Like, it's such limited time. Sometimes I like to schedule out, practice plans. I'm curious, we're talking about, the balance of flow, but I also would love to know, like, do you have an idea? Of course you have an idea, but like, what is your, like, the balance of your flow look like, and your like planning and intentionality of practices look like?
Oh, dude, it's
Or
so
even,
fun. It's so funny, dude. I got this right here. I'll put it up to the screen. Like, so here's a practice plan. It's probably backwards or whatever, but basically what you have, like, is all the things here that I'd like to accomplish that day, and then the numbers coincide with like what the order of it ended up being based on where the flow was in any given moment. So it's like, all right, I think we need to do these things today, but I'm not committed to the order in which it's going to go down. It's like all of a sudden practice starts, it seems like their energy's kind of low. It's like, all right, well, let's spend a little more time revving them up here. Let's do our skill work. Let's just do our shooting now or something like that. Sometimes practice starts, it's live. It's like, dude, let's do our live 5-on-5 stuffs now. Like, look, their energy is great, dude. Let's just ride it. Let's ride it. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, like, there's these ebbs and flows in practice, and the artistry becomes like, how can we maximize these 2 hours while not necessarily trying to feel like they're being manipulated, right? Like, when a player feels like they're being manipulated for an end that like has not been communicated to them, or an end that they don't really understand, it's hard to get the most out of that 2 hour session. You know what I mean? So we just kind of ride the flow. And but then again, there's certain times where you got to put your foot down and be like, look, we need to do this right now. We need to do it at a higher level than we're doing it right now. And we need to be doing this with much more enthusiasm than we're doing it right now. You know? So when you have to pick those moments to have those fights, again, is the artistry in just kind of navigating flow, and understanding when those moments are like, no, we need to toughen up right now. Or like, you know what? Like, I feel you guys. You guys feel a little tired today. We've been on the road quite a bit. Like, we've had a pretty good practice up till this point. I'll decelerate with you guys, and we'll just shoot some free throws and at least get better at that, while I'm acknowledging that I trust that you're tired right now. And I'm gonna protect you in that one, and I'm gonna ride with you on that one, and I feel you on that one. But I'll tell you what, tomorrow we need to do this, this, and that, and we need to be live when we're doing it. Fair? All right, coach, let's make a deal. Deal. Shoot free throws. You know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's that balance. I'm gonna have to steal that from you on terms of like, because I'm someone that maybe sometimes is too structured. Okay, we're gonna do 5-on-5 live here. We're gonna run through our sets here, right, and we'll get our shooting here. But I kind of like the idea of potentially just riding the flow. Sometimes, yeah, they have great energy, or sometimes they have no energy at the start, and so kind of being able to navigate that is again the art of coaching. And I'm guessing it's similar with a game plan.
Yeah, and that's what you find is when you kind of get more and more practice every day of just like finding that flow and riding that flow, the players kind of become more adaptable too. Because like, I could come into a game with these scripted plans, like first 3 plays, we're gonna throw it to our big guy, we're gonna run this, we're gonna run this, we're gonna run this, and just throw it into them. And then all of a sudden they come out in the zone, and it's like, well, you know, now what? Because I was so committed to the way that I thought things were going to go, as opposed to being totally committed to just feeling the game flow and trusting your gut and going from there. You know what I mean? Um, I think just kind of riding the practice flow like that is something for me that I've learned, to get the most out of each practice. And it establishes a certain kind of trust with the players, and also just kind of, again, makes things more adaptable in a game plan. You might have a guess on how you think a team is going to play you, but until you go out there, we're not really sure. Like, even on Saturday, we did a lot of prep last week, for thinking that Shasta was going to switch all screens, right? And we get out there, and they're not really switching. So it's like, well, you never really know how someone's going to play you. You just got to just kind of stay in the moment and just kind of ride that flow, and trust your gut, you know?
Right. And make those in-game adjustments. 100%. I'm curious, as I played for you when I was in high school. You're now a college coach. What do you think the biggest difference is between, coaching high school basketball, varsity basketball, and JUCO basketball?
Good question. I think there's an obvious difference in the speed of the game. I think the game's played at a much faster tempo, much higher pace. When I go to high school games now, like, I'm just continually amazed by how small the court is. Like, I just, once you coach in college for a while, coach FIBA, you get on a high school floor, and you're like, dude, how does anybody score out here, dude? It's so cramped. There's no spacing. It's like, even when you make a great move and you blow by a guy, it's like you're just gonna run somebody over. And the 3-point line is it's just like, the spacing element is something that's really profound to me. At our level, we moved the 3-point line back even further this year, so I think it even alleviates the spacing problems even more than they would be in high school. Yeah, we've had quite a few kids like pump fake and step out of bounds this year, still trying to feel their way onto the new floor. But I think pace and spacing, um, at our level, I mean, yeah, like, there's a size, obviously players are bigger, faster, stronger at our level, but not to the degree that they used to be when I was a junior college player, when you had, Pac-12 guys playing at all these different schools and whatnot. Now those guys kind of get gobbled up by by bigger schools, so you might not see them at our level the way that you used to. But for me, it's just it's pace and it's spacing, which are the biggest differences. I think there's much more flow to the games. I mean, the 30-second shot clock, it's that's what high school is too right now, right? 30 seconds. Yeah, I still prefer the 24-second shot clock like they have in FIBA. I think that just creates even better game flow, and as I've said before, it's like with that small shot clock and in FIBA coaches can't call timeouts. So like if your team isn't prepared to play without you, like they just can't even function, dude, because it's like you can't call a timeout and next thing you know there's 8 left on the shot clock. So like if you're not organized, you really get exposed at that level, and I kind of like it that way because it empowers players more. It makes practice time more important because you have to get organized, and it just players, they're gonna have to make so many decisions on their own, and that's what basketball should be. And in my view, we should be empowering them in practice and giving them all the tools to go make these decisions without you. And that's kind of how we play at Redwoods. It really is more of a FIBA brand of basketball than I would say, just like a California JUCO, so to speak.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And how many years have you been at CR now?
This is my 4th year, but this is our only my 3rd season because we didn't play due to COVID
As a
one
coach.
year.
Okay. Yeah. So since you've been there for 3 or 4 years, I know the program wasn't, as successful before you got there. Part of obviously, I think the difference between high school and college is obviously where you're, at a JUCO level, you're doing significantly more recruiting. You're talking about kind of players running the show a little bit more of a FIBA style of basketball. I'm guessing that you obviously have to have a ton of trust in your players. And,
Hmm.
and during the recruiting process, I'm curious, in that process, are you looking for a certain type of player? Obviously, talent and skill comes in the mix, right?
Right.
You're not going to hire someone with a great attitude, but they can't shoot, or whatever it may be, that's not athletic, you know. But there's also, I'm sure a component that you just talked about Redwood style of basketball, right? You're starting to build like an identity, a culture there, and I'm sure there's some recruiting tactics that you use to find the right style of player, but in terms of mindset as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I try to play into the historical values of College of the Redwoods, and a lot of that was established by Bill Treglone, the longtime coach here for 30 years. He's in the California JUCO Hall of Fame, Coach Tregs, as he was known. He developed a style, and they used to call it shooting threes from the trees, right? And he always was a very, very liberal offensive coach who really valued shooting the three ball. I also really value shooting the three ball. So we value shooting a lot in recruiting. Um, you know, we also try to recruit players who come from programs that are successful, right? So we like to find players who come from programs who have winning cultures. Those players understand typically the importance of practice every day. They've established, winning habits, which is something that's important to us. We try to find players who enjoy playing defense and enjoy trying to evolve as playmakers on that side of the floor, who enjoy communicating. Um, and overall, like, we just try to find great people. Like I try to recruit people who have great senses of humor. I think when you can laugh and joke in your working environment, then it also allows you to ask for them to kind of even be more serious than you can ask players to typically, because you give them the other side of it, the other extreme. So I feel like you can get more on the other side if you can kind of show, a levity on the other side. So someone with a good sense of humor, someone who can shoot, someone who enjoys playing D. That's a great place to start in terms of our recruiting profile. And then of course just players who come from winning programs. Arcata High, as you know, has been a winning program for a long time. We have 3 Arcata High players now. We started this whole operation with Thomas Nelson, who was an Arcata player. So I mean, even that program historically has fed into Redwoods in a way that's really benefited us, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. Um, you know, I like to know about a player's goals and dreams in basketball when we're recruiting them. It's a question I like to ask often is like, where do you see yourself in the game? Like, what are your basketball dreams? And then you just ask yourself as a coach is whether or not we here at Redwoods can play into those dreams and help them come true. And but I think when players are really clear about what they want, it's a lot easier to service them and help them reach those goals of what they want. Like, I want to be a Division 3 player and I want to go to a high academic school and get a degree. It's like, dude, if you're that clear about what you want, like, we got you. Like, we can get you there, you know? But if you it's like, I don't know, like, I might want to play D1, like, I don't know, like, I just want to play somewhere where I'm going to be able to get a lot of shots up. It's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if you're as clear about what you want, and I don't know if I can help you until I understand like really what you want to get from this experience. If a player tells you that he wants to win a championship, that's always something that excites me. It's like, oh, you want to win a championship? All right, well, let's go. Let's talk more about that. You know.
100%. Yeah, I love it. You're kind of building those, those high character guys that, play 3 and D, but also at the same time, have just a championship mindset, right? Because they come from winning programs. They understand what it really takes, because it takes a lot, right? Like you don't get to take days off if you want to become a championship program. And I'm sure, you've probably, worked with tons of athletes, across, your career so far. And, the athletes that really stand apart are the ones that are the most consistent.
100%. And I was having this conversation with my associate head coach, a guy named Justin Claus, who you might know. He's a brilliant coach, one of the best young coaches I've ever seen in my life. It's not even close. He's amazing, and he's an integral part of our success. But look, we're going for a three-peat this year, right here at Redwoods, and we're ranked number 12 in California, the highest ranking we've ever had. We're 17-2, and Justin, because of the big earthquake we had, he can't even live in his own house right now. And like, we've had these crazy weather events where we can't practice and we're getting our games moved and stuff like that. And I was telling Justin, it's like, wouldn't it just be so much easier if we weren't trying to win championships and we were just kind of rolling the balls out and being like, hey, whatever, man, let's just go practice today. Let's just go play today. But the bottom line is, dude, we're going for a three-peat. Like, it's so much more difficult when you're trying to achieve that high reaching fruit, that fruit on the top of the tree that looks so ripe that you just want to take a big bite out of. It'd be a lot easier if we weren't reaching for that. And it's like, listen, man, let's just focus on getting your house set up. Let's just take the day off of practice today and just just shoot the ball and get on the gun and just chill out. But it's like, nah, man, like we really are trying to be great. We're trying to achieve things that are really hard to achieve. And in the context of all this life stuff that we're kind of enduring right now, it's a lot easy. It's a lot harder, I should say, for us to try to, you know, achieve those goals than it is, for a team that's just like, kind of rolling the balls out and just kind of, collecting a check and just kind of, doing whatever they want to do. So our feet are held to the fire, man. And we promised these players that these were the kind of people that they were going to come play for. So even though there's so much stuff going on, the discipline for us coaches to come to the gym every day and try to improve ourselves the way we ask our players to, right? Like, we come to the gym every day trying to get better, just like the players, man. And when they can feel that coming from you, even amidst like real life adversity that we're all kind of going through right now, I think that only makes you tighter as a group. And I think it really just hardens your resolve to achieve these goals that we've all been really clear with each other that we want to achieve together.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's being honest and being intentional, and then also continuing to show up every day as coaches, right? Number one, modeling it, and obviously with all the weather and the earthquake going on there, like it's presenting quite a bit of challenges. But I feel like those challenges present an opportunity to, stay connected and grow even more as a team. And, congrats on being number 12 in the nation. Maybe you'll be featured in ELAC, Last Chance U, if you get to play them in playoffs. I'll be looking out for you on that. But, in the last 2 minutes here, the little of the fourth quarter of our podcast, I'm just like, do you have any final kind of, thoughts and words of advice for, young coaches, young leaders like myself who are, obviously trying to find a way to give back, whether it's a game of basketball or maybe it's, a football player that's, wants to get into coaching, just like anyone who just wants to get into coaching and giving back, a game they love.
Great question, man. And you just said it right there about giving back, like when you have that selfless kind of approach to coaching the game, I think good things happen. I mean, for me, again, number one, be yourself, man. Like show your people who you really are, man. And that'll allow them to settle down and allow themselves to be coached in a way that's gonna service them in the long term. Number two, honor the game, man. Like basketball has given us so much. Like the reason that we all get together every day is because we love the game of basketball. Like it's been a centerpiece to all of our lives. We need to honor the game. We need to play the game with great sportsmanship. We have to treat the game with love and with care, because if all you do is take from it, I don't think that's the right spirit of the game. This game is meant to be giving, and you're supposed to give it to other people and give it to each other when you're together. So be yourself, honor the game, coach the human being. Don't coach the player, coach the human, man. Seek depth and commitment in your relationships. Do whatever you got to do to establish trust with each other. And just, your players have to know that you care about them and love them unconditionally as people, if any of the coaching is going to take root anyways. I think the game is very musical. That's a topic for another day, but I think, paying attention to the rhythm of the game, the flow, creating harmony with your personnel groupings, trying to assert superior tone, as in the way that you play. And I try to rehearse like a 5-piece band, in practice. Like I really do take a lot of musical elements and apply them to basketball. But I think lastly, you got to remember to have fun, man. Like the game is meant to be joyous. Trust your gut and just let it rip, dude. Like you have to be having fun too, or else all the other stuff you're working on is going to be compromised to a certain degree. So enjoy the game as well. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be played and taught with a lot of love.
Trust your gut, let it rip, teach the game with a lot of love. Thank you so much for your time today, Bees. I enjoyed. I got a full page of notes, got a lot of clips, and I'm excited to, share this out with our audience and, probably share it out with some of our, my former teammates and others along the way.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I love the work that you're doing. Please keep this up, man. I would love to help you in any way I can grow this thing, because I really believe in what you're doing, man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Beast.
All right. Peace out, brother.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.